Let's look at a typical safari day. Many people ask me what a day would look like. How far do we travel? People are scared of the traveling and they're getting tired and all of those things, and I understand that. And it is a question that I get quite a lot, is what is a typical African safari day? Well, it's very difficult to define it because there is no such a thing as a typical day. If we're in the central Kalahari, the distances that we travel is a lot less, so we have late mornings, early evenings and short days. If we're traveling to the Serengeti, we have to do 10,000 kilometers in 30 days, and you can only do that by traveling those 10,000 kilometers. So I always say to people, you can't drive 10,000 kilometers without driving 10,000 kilometers. The meaning of that is that you just have to do it. Now, how you structure it is very important. When I design my trips, I typically design it around our standard 7-day week. And I would say that 5 days we work and 2 days we'll take off. So in a week cycle, for example, on Serengeti, let's say it's a 5-week trip, I will have 5 separate weeks in that trip. And we will work for a few days, we'll take a few days off. We'll work a few days, we'll take a few days off. And in that way you can get some mileage behind you, and you're not always stuck with breaking your days up in exact sizes, where you leave at 9, you get up in at camp at 3, and every day is the same thing because you've divided into 30 little pieces. But rather we do a bit of traveling, we do a bit of work, and you get rather tired, and then after the few days you get to a hot spring and you spend 2 nights there. You have off 2 nights, we have a braai night, whatever we do to relax a little bit. So as I said, there's no real typical safari day, but what I normally try to do is leave camp 2 hours after sunrise. Now typically that would end up being around 8 o'clock. Maybe in summer it would be at 7:30. So if we already had 2 hours of sunlight, it gives you enough time to have your coffee, to have some breakfast, to get your tents organized, pack your stuff away, and we go. Typically, I try to prepare people in a way that breaking up camp and making camp is a quick affair. It's not a 2-hour thing. We can do it in 20 minutes, half an hour, and camp is set. And you can have your meals and have a beer and relax a little bit. So normally our departure would be in the morning, as I say, about 2 hours after sunrise, which brings it around about 7:30, 8ish, depends on where we are and what we're doing. Then it depends on the activities of the day. If we're driving for the day, if we leave at 8, we will stop for coffee at 10 o'clock. I have a big flame at the back, which makes hot water very quickly. So I'll boil a kettle, everybody brings their mugs and they have their coffee and tea, whatever they want to drink with them. So they just bring the mugs, they get hot water from me. And we would have a coffee break at 10 o'clock, after about 2 hours driving. 10 o'clock coffee break for about 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on the day. And then let's say at 10:30 we depart again from our coffee break. We will put in another 2 hours, and that will bring us to lunch. So 10:30 will bring us to 12:30 for lunch, and our lunch stop will be 45 minutes to an hour depending on the day. So 12:30 up to, let's say, 1:30. And normally the last stretch would then be the stretch through to camp. Normally it's not necessary to fit in another coffee stop because you only would have another 2 hours to go if anything. So with that being said, I would say a typical day would probably have 3 sessions of 2 hours each. And that's just a typical day when we're driving. If we're doing a short day, we would either, depending on the activities at the 2 campsites, we will either leave late, so we leave at 10 or 11 in the morning, or we will leave normal time and arrive early. So if we go to Vic Falls and people want to see Vic Falls in the afternoon, I'd rather arrive there early in the afternoon, so we'll leave early in the morning to get there in time. So I adjust the departure times depending on the campsites that I know and what activities they have and what the day will hold for us. So yeah, leave at 8, coffee at 10, lunch at 12:30, and then probably in camp 3:34ish. That's what I would like to do. Sometimes the days are just a bit longer. People don't realize that Africa doesn't have many campsites, and we're often stuck with the ones that we use. And if they are 8 hours apart, they're 8 hours apart. There's nothing that you can do about it. So we try to manage it in such a way that a day is livable. Now, what I also do if I do a long trip, the Gorillas in December or Serengeti in June, I would keep an eye on the group itself, and I would listen to the conversations, and I would get a feel for how they are doing, who's struggling, who's not struggling. And I can change my departure and arrival days or times in the mornings. I can change that to suit the resting a little bit better. I can also change days on a trip. Say it's a 30-day trip, I can always move a rest day. Let's say we're going down to Lake Malawi and I've got a single day here and 2 days there. Then I can always swap the two around and say, let's bring the 2 days forward and rather take a break. It happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago when we went into Tanzania. And we hit roadworks that I did not expect in Tanzania. And suddenly we had a very long day with roadworks. And that night, everybody was just really tired. And what we did was we just brought the second 2 days, we swapped the 2 nights around. And I can just quickly do this change on the trip. I have contact with all my accommodation providers or the campsites that I visit, and I just let them know we're going to do 2 nights and we'll move that night a little bit further on. So I can adjust. I don't like to do the adjustment on the days because some people are relying on it for washing or for grocery shopping. So I prefer to keep things as it is, as it's been planned. But I have the ability to move, and I would normally do it in consultation with the group itself. So normally it would just be the times that we manage. Something else that I do is also to not be too strict on the convoy itself. I don't do the militaristic style thing. I manage people and I manage the convoy. And for me, the convoy doesn't have to start with me. I can be in the middle or I can be in the back. And I determine my position based on how the people are feeling and what is happening on the day. So let's say, for example, we are traveling from Iringa in Tanzania and we are traveling down to Dar es Salaam. Long day. I wouldn't do that, but it's a long day. And we sleep at a place which is just next to the road, just before the city, for example. What I would do then is I would give the coordinates to the whole group and say, this is where we're going for tonight. It is 650 kilometers and it will take you about 10 hours to get there. So there's no place to sleep in between, we have to just get there. I don't force people to leave with me and drive behind me. Some people have the vehicles that can go a little bit faster. This truck of mine goes 103 and that's it. But some vehicles can go a little bit faster, or people are just feeling like they want to take the day and just do their own thing. And I give them the coordinates, I'll give them the directions and say, straight down this road, on the right hand side, you'll see it. And that's it. I will then make sure that I have contact with the person that's right in the back, if it's not myself. And I will just use that person right in the back as the sweeper. And he will always come up and make sure that there's nobody falling behind him. And as long as I have contact with him, I know that my group is either between me and him in the back, or they are in front of me and I will find them on the road. So it is another thing that I do to alleviate the stresses of traveling in convoy. So there's no convoy travel, we are this train and we are going from A to B. We don't do that. Sometimes we do, and sometimes it's necessary. But if the roads are open and it's a fairly free day, then I would free people up to do their own thing and just release a little bit of that pressure that starts building inside a convoy. Because convoys do take longer. I will give you a formula one day that will show you how to determine how long it's going to take you based on how many vehicles you have in your convoy. Every vehicle that you add to a convoy adds time. If you have 10 vehicles and you take each vehicle and give them the destination, you will get there quicker than saying to one person, you have to get there and the rest has to travel with him. That I can guarantee you. Because if you're traveling in convoy, people slow down. So a typical safari day is not about sitting in convoy and being militaristic about things. That's not what we do. We get up, have breakfast, break up camp, get onto the road. 2 hours after departure, we stop for coffee, find a tree, have a bit of a rest. Then another 2 hours later, another stop, I boil another kettle, and we have something for lunch. And typically after that, we just push through to camp and get to camp. Getting to camp, I make the fires, I carry the wood for the trip, I carry the charcoal for the trip, so I make sure that I get that. You don't have to pay any money for it, it's included in your fee. It's my responsibility to look or to have a fire at night. That fire would be the braai fire as well. So as we're driving 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're just about to arrive in camp, I would call on the radio and I would say, who's braaiing tonight? And I have 7 vehicles and I've got 3 yeses. It means that I can make a smaller fire, conserve a little bit of my wood, so I need to have a good enough fire for three groups braaiing. And that will also be our campfire, and if I have some extra wood, we'll add that and have a nice kuier around the fire. But that's what I do, is I make sure that there's a fire every evening for a braai. You don't have to contribute to it, you don't have to pay extra money for it, it's included in your fee. And that will pretty much be it. We'll be sitting around the fire and have a nice chat about the day, and then people will get to bed. It's always the same. First night, people are keen to stay up and they want to kuier until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. You get to day number 7 and the fresh air and all the new stuff has gotten to your brain. Everybody disappears at 8 o'clock and they're off to bed. And that's what traveling does. It does tire you out. You're busy. You're always busy with things. And I keep telling stories during the day. We stop at specific places and I'll tell you the background and the history and interesting things and facts about the area. So your brain is busy, your body is busy, you're working all day long, so you do get tired. And after a few days, people are out and into bed early in the evenings. And it's nice. You really have a good rest. Next morning you're fresh. 2 hours after sunrise, off we go. So that's it. That is a typical day in safari life, and as I said, I try to run it on 7-day cycles, work in a rest day somewhere in a week, or 2 if I can afford it, time-wise, but yeah. So that's a typical day in a Blue Rhino safari. It's a lot of fun, and a lot of people come back for more.